The crimson sands of Proxima Centauri stretched as far as the eye could see, broken only by the occasional jutting spire of crystalline rock. Dr. Aria Chen adjusted her helmet's oxygen flow, her breath fogging the visor momentarily as she trudged across the alien landscape. The exoplanet's dual suns cast long, eerie shadows across the terrain, creating an otherworldly tapestry of light and dark. Aria checked her wrist computer, confirming that she was still on course. This solo expedition was a calculated risk, a chance to prove her theories about potential alien artifacts on humanity's nearest exoplanet neighbor. The scientific community had scoffed at her ideas, but Aria knew in her bones that she was right. She just needed proof. As she crested a particularly steep dune, something caught her eye. A glint of metal, out of place among the red rocks and sand. Aria's heart raced as she approached, her steps quickening despite the planet's slightly higher gravity. As she drew closer, she realized she was looking at a structure, or at least part of one, buried beneath centuries of wind-blown sand. With trembling hands, Aria activated her suit's built-in excavation tools. Small, precise lasers began to cut away at the sand, revealing more of the structure beneath. Hours passed in a blur of excitement and anticipation. Finally, as Proxima Centauri's smaller sun dipped below the horizon, Aria uncovered what appeared to be an entrance. The structure was clearly artificial, its smooth, iridescent surface defying any natural formation. Intricate patterns swirled across its surface, pulsing with a faint inner light. Aria's scientific mind raced with possibilities. Was this evidence of an ancient alien civilization, or something even more extraordinary? Taking a deep breath, Aria pressed her gloved hand against what she hoped was an access panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hum that she felt more than heard, a seam appeared in the structure's side. It widened, revealing a dark interior. Well, Aria muttered to herself, in for a penny, in for a pound. She stepped inside, her suit's lights automatically activating to pierce the darkness. The interior was a single, circular chamber, its walls covered in the same swirling patterns as the exterior. In the center stood a pedestal, atop which rested a small, spherical object. Aria approached cautiously, her scientific training warring with her burning curiosity. The sphere was about the size of a baseball, its surface a deep, swirling blue that seemed to move and shift as she watched. Without thinking, she reached out to touch it. The moment her fingers made contact, the sphere erupted in a blaze of light. Aria stumbled back, momentarily blinded. When her vision cleared, she found herself surrounded by a holographic display that filled the entire chamber. Alien script scrolled past, incomprehensible yet somehow familiar. Then, to Aria's shock, the script began to transform, rearranging itself into English words. Greetings, Inheritor. If you are reading this message, then the Precursor's worst fears have come to pass. The Void Heralds have awakened, and the galaxy once again stands on the brink of annihilation. Aria's mind reeled. Precursors. Void Heralds. What had she stumbled into? The message continued. This Nexus sphere contains the collective knowledge and technology of our civilization. It has chosen you as its wielder. With it, you have the power to stand against the coming darkness. But beware, others will sense its activation. You must act quickly. As if on cue, a tremor ran through the chamber. Aria's suit sensors blared warnings. Something massive was entering the planet's atmosphere. The holographic display flickered, showing her an image of a vast, dark shape descending from the stars. Oh, hell, Aria muttered, her scientific skepticism evaporating in the face of undeniable evidence. She grabbed the Nexus sphere, which pulsed warmly in her hand. Knowledge flooded her mind. Star charts, alien languages, advanced technology far beyond human understanding. She stumbled out of the chamber, her head spinning with the influx of information. The ground shook more violently now, and in the distance she could see a pillar of fire descending from the sky. Whatever was coming, it wasn't friendly. Aria looked down at the sphere in her hand, then back at the approaching ship. In that moment, she realized her life would never be the same. She was no longer just Dr. Aria Chen, exoplanet researcher. She was now the inheritor of an ancient legacy, thrust into a conflict spanning galaxies. With a deep breath, Aria activated her suit's emergency beacon. As she waited for her ship's AI to initiate remote takeoff procedures, she couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. She had come looking for proof of alien life. Instead, she had found herself at the center of an intergalactic war. The Nexus sphere pulsed in her hand, as if reassuring her. Somehow, Aria knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. As her ship broke through Proxima Centauri B's atmosphere, leaving the approaching alien vessel behind, she steeled herself for what was to come. The galaxy was in danger, and for better or worse, she was now its unlikely defender. It was time to see what this Nexus sphere could really do. Aria's ship, the Curiosity, hurtled through the vast emptiness of space, its AI pushing the engines well beyond their usual limits. In the cockpit, Aria sat cross-legged, the Nexus sphere hovering inches above her open palms. Her eyes were closed, her face a mask of concentration, as she absorbed the torrent of information flowing from the artifact. Star charts, alien histories, and advanced scientific concepts cascaded through her mind. But it was the knowledge of the void heralds that chilled her to the bone. Ancient beings of unfathomable power, they sought to remake the galaxy in their own twisted image. The precursors had fought them to a stalemate eons ago, but at a terrible cost. Now the heralds were stirring once more. A sudden lurch jolted Aria from her trance. The ship's eye spoke, its voice tinged with artificial concern. "Dr. Chen, we're being pulled off course by an unknown force. Our destination has been overwritten." Aria's eyes snapped open. What? By whom? The Nexus sphere pulsed, and Aria understood. It was guiding them, leading them to somewhere. New coordinates locked in, the AI reported. Estimated arrival time: 6 hours. Aria sighed, running a hand through her disheveled hair. Might as well get some rest then. Wake me when we're close. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of burning worlds and shadowy figures. When Aria awoke, it was to the AI's gentle prompt and the sight of an unfamiliar planet looming large in the view screen. "Welcome to Lyra Prime," a voice echoed in her mind. The Nexus sphere glowed softly. Once a thriving hub of the precursor civilization, now a sanctuary for those who still remember the old ways. As the Curiosity breached the planet's atmosphere, Aria gasped. The surface was a patchwork of lush forests and gleaming crystal cities that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. Flying creatures with iridescent wings soared between towering spires, while on the ground, beings of all shapes and sizes went about their business. The ship touched down on a landing pad that materialized out of thin air. As Aria stepped out, she was greeted by a tall, willowy being with skin like polished silver and eyes that sparkled like galaxies. "Welcome, inheritor," the being said, its voice melodious and genderless. "I am Zephyr, keeper of memories. We've been expecting you." Aria blinked in surprise. "You have? But I only just found out about all of this myself." Zephyr smiled enigmatically. The Nexus sphere chooses its wielder carefully, and its activation sends ripples through the fabric of space-time. "Come, there is much to discuss." As they walked through the Crystal City, Aria marveled at the diversity of life around her. Creatures that defied earthly classification went about their daily lives, some eyeing her curiously, others with a mix of hope and apprehension. "The beings you see here are refugees," Zephyr explained. "Survivors from worlds already touched by the Void Heralds. They come seeking sanctuary and a chance to fight back." They arrived at a grand structure that seemed to be made of living light. Inside, a circular chamber awaited them, its walls displaying real-time images of various sectors of the galaxy. "This is the astrolabe," Zephyr said. "From here, we monitor the Herald's movements, and coordinate our efforts to stop them. Aria's eyes widened as she took in the scale of the conflict. Entire star systems were dark, consumed by an inky void that seemed to devour light itself. "But what can I do?" Aria asked, feeling small and overwhelmed. "I'm just a scientist from Earth. I don't know the first thing about fighting an intergalactic war." Zephyr placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "The Nexus Sphere chose you for a reason, Aria. It contains not only knowledge but power, the ability to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. With training, you could become a formidable force against the Heralds." As if in response, the Nexus Sphere pulsed. Aria felt a surge of energy course through her body. Without thinking, she raised her hand, and a swirling vortex of energy materialized in her palm. "Incredible," Zephyr breathed. "You're a natural conduit for the sphere's power. With time and practice, you could rival the precursors themselves." Aria closed her fist, dissipating the energy. The enormity of her situation was starting to sink in. But what about Earth? My home, my family, they're defenseless against this threat. Zephyr's expression grew solemn. "Earth is but one world among millions, Aria. The Heralds threaten all of creation. If we fail to stop them, nowhere will be safe." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Aria's mind raced, torn between her duty to her home planet and the larger responsibility thrust upon her. The fate of the galaxy now rested, at least in part, on her shoulders. "How long?" she finally asked. "How long do we have before the Heralds reach full strength?" Zephyr manipulated the astrolabe's controls, bringing up a complex set of calculations. "Based on current projections, we estimate 6 Earth months before they can launch a full-scale invasion. But their influence is already spreading, corrupting worlds and bending lesser species to their will." Aria took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Then we have work to do. I'll need to learn everything I can, as quickly as possible. And we'll need allies, every species, every world that's willing to stand against the Heralds." A spark of hope ignited in Zephyr's cosmic eyes. "Then you accept your role as the inheritor. You'll stand with us against the coming darkness." Aria looked down at the Nexus Sphere, still hovering near her hand. In its swirling depths, she saw reflections of distant worlds, of beings whose very existence hung in the balance. She thought of Earth, of her family, of everything she had left behind. But she also thought of the responsibility she now carried. A duty not just to her own species, but to all life in the galaxy. "I accept," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this, but I'm the one you've got. So let's make the most of it." Zephyr nodded solemnly. "Then let your training begin. We'll start with the basics of energy manipulation and move on to advanced quantum mechanics. The Nexus Sphere will guide you, but it will take all of your focus and determination to master its power." As Aria followed Zephyr deeper into the complex, her mind swam with the enormity of the task ahead. She was no longer just Dr. Aria Chen, exoplanet researcher. She was the inheritor, a beacon of hope against an encroaching darkness. The next few weeks passed in a blur of intense training and information overload. Aria learned to harness the Nexus Sphere's power, bending light, gravity, and even the fabric of space-time itself. She studied the history of the precursors, the nature of the Void Heralds, and the intricate politics of the various alien species that made up the galactic community. But even as her powers grew, so did the threat. Reports came in daily of more worlds falling to the Herald's influence. The void was spreading, and time was running out. One night, as Aria stood on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City, Zephyr approached with a grave expression. "We've received a distress call," the Keeper of Memories said. "A nearby system is under attack by Herald forces. They're requesting immediate assistance." Aria felt a flutter of fear in her stomach, but she pushed it aside. This was what she had been training for. "Then that's where we're going. It's time to put all this practice to the test." As they rushed to prepare a response team, Arya couldn't help but think of how far she had come. From a lonely researcher on a distant world to the galaxy's best hope for survival. The weight of responsibility was immense, but for the first time since this journey began, she felt ready to bear it. The Nexus sphere hummed with energy, resonating with her determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever horrors the Void Heralds might unleash, Arya knew one thing for certain. She would face them head-on, not just for Earth, but for all the beings throughout the cosmos who called the stars their home. As the rescue ship prepared for takeoff, Arya took one last look at the shimmering city that had become her training ground. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped aboard, ready to face her destiny among the stars. The rescue ship, christened the Starweaver, cut through the inky blackness of space like a silver arrow. Arya stood at the helm, the Nexus sphere hovering just above her shoulder, its soft blue glow a stark contrast to the red alert warnings flashing across the ship's consoles. ETA to the Vega system. 5 minutes, announced the ship's eye. Herald activity detected on multiple planets. Zephyr, who stood beside Arya, manipulated a holographic display. The distress call originated from Vega Prime, the system's capital world. Population: approximately 12 billion sentients. Arya's stomach churned. The stakes were higher than she could have imagined. What's our plan? We evacuate as many as we can, Zephyr replied grimly, and we find out what the Heralds are after in this system. Every bit of intelligence we gather brings us closer to understanding their endgame. As they dropped out of hyperspace, the devastation became immediately apparent. The once beautiful green and blue world of Vega Prime was marred by spreading patches of inky darkness. Massive herald ships loomed in orbit, their twisted, organic forms a nightmarish blend of technology and flesh. By the precursors, Zephyr whispered, horror evident in their voice. Arya steeled herself. We need to get down there. Now. The descent to Vega Prime's surface was chaotic. The Starweaver weaved through debris fields and energy blasts, relying on Arya's newly honed abilities and the ship's advanced technology to avoid destruction. As they broke through the cloud cover, the true extent of the Herald invasion became clear. Towering crystalline spires, once the pride of vegan architecture, lay shattered. Streets teemed with panicked citizens fleeing from shadowy creatures that seemed to shift and morph with every movement. In the distance, a massive portal crackled with dark energy, spewing forth more Herald forces. There, Zephyr pointed to a fortified structure still standing amidst the chaos. The Planetary Defense Headquarters. If anyone's coordinating a resistance, they'll be there. Arya nodded, guiding the ship towards a landing pad atop the building. As they disembarked, they were met by a group of armed vegans, humanoid beings with iridescent skin and large almond-shaped eyes. I am Commander Lyra, the lead vegan announced, her voice tinged with both hope and suspicion. You've answered our distress call, but I must ask, who are you? Arya stepped forward, the Nexus sphere pulsing gently beside her. I'm Dr. Arya Chen, Earth scientist, and, well, apparently the inheritor of some ancient alien legacy. We're here to help. Lyra's eyes widened at the sight of the Nexus sphere. The inheritor. Then the legends are true. Come, quickly. We don't have much time. They rushed into the building, descending to a war room filled with holographic displays and frantic officers. Lyra brought them up to speed. The Herald attack had begun suddenly, without warning. Their forces seemed endless, and conventional weapons had little effect. We've managed to hold this section of the city, Lyra explained, but we're losing ground by the hour. That portal is their source. If we can't close it, Vega Prime will fall. Arya studied the tactical displays, her mind racing. The knowledge imparted by the Nexus sphere bubbled to the surface. The portal. It's a tear in space-time. With enough power, we might be able to collapse it. Enough power? Lyra asked, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Arya nodded. The Nexus sphere. But I'll need help, a team to get me close enough while holding off the Herald forces. Lyra didn't hesitate. You'll have our best, myself included. As they formulated their plan, a new alert blared through the command center. A Herald dreadnought, massive beyond comprehension, had entered the system. Time was running out. The next few hours were a blur of preparation and tense strategy sessions. Aria worked with vegan scientists, combining their technology with the knowledge from the Nexus sphere to create devices that could disrupt Herald energy signatures. Meanwhile, Lyra assembled an elite strike team, each member bringing unique skills to the table. There was Zax, a vegan tech expert whose cybernetic enhancements allowed him to interface directly with machines. Nara, a Lith assassin from the shadowy worlds of the Outer Rim, her body housing symbiotic organisms that enhanced her already formidable abilities. And Kathok, a hulking warrior of the silicon-based Petrovan race, whose crystalline body was virtually indestructible. As the team made final preparations, Aria found a moment alone with Zephyr. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I'm not ready for this?" Zephyr placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Fear is natural, Aria. But remember, the Nexus sphere chose you. Trust in that choice, and in yourself." The plan was daring, perhaps even foolhardy. While Lyra's forces provided a distraction, Aria and her newly formed team would infiltrate the Herald-controlled zone, fighting their way to the portal. Once there, Aria would use the Nexus sphere's power, amplified by vegan technology, to collapse the rift. As they moved through the ruined streets of the vegan capital, Aria was struck by the surreal nature of her situation. Just months ago, her biggest concern had been securing funding for her research. Now she was leading an alien strike team against extra-dimensional invaders. The fighting was intense. Herald creatures swarmed them at every turn, their forms defying natural law. Kathok's crystalline fists shattered Herald foot soldiers, while Nara's symbiote-enhanced reflexes allowed her to dance through their ranks, leaving destruction in her wake. Zax worked tirelessly, hacking into abandoned vegan systems to turn them against the invaders. And Aria felt the power of the Nexus sphere flowing through her like never before. She bent light to create illusions, manipulated gravity to crush Herald forces, and opened microportals to redirect enemy fire. With each use of her abilities, her connection to the artifact grew stronger. As they neared the main portal, the resistance grew fiercer. Herald elites, towering monstrosities of void-twisted flesh and metal, barred their path. It was Lyra who turned the tide, her tactical brilliance and personal courage rallying the team for a final push. Finally, they stood before the crackling void portal. Up close, it was a thing of terrible beauty. A swirling maelstrom of dark energy, punctuated by flashes of otherworldly lightning. Herald reinforcements poured through in a never-ending stream. "Whatever you're going to do, Inheritor, do it now," Kathok bellowed, his crystalline form absorbing blasts of void energy that would have vaporized any other being. Aria stepped forward, raising the Nexus sphere high. She felt its power surge through her, combining with the vegan amplifiers strapped to her arms. The very fabric of reality seemed to bend around her. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if this was all a mistake? Then she heard Zephyr's voice in her mind, a memory from her training. "The power was always within you, Aria. The sphere is just a key to unlock it." With a primal scream, Aria unleashed the full might of the Nexus sphere. Reality itself seemed to warp and twist. The portal flickered, its energies fluctuating wildly. Herald creatures shrieked in alien tongues, their forms beginning to unravel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sound like the birth of a universe, the portal collapsed in on itself. A shockwave of energy rippled outward, disintegrating any herald caught in its path. As the dust settled, an eerie quiet fell over the battlefield. Aria swayed on her feet, drained but exhilarated. Lyra caught her before she could fall. "You did it," the vegan commander said, awe in her voice. "You actually did it." Zax's voice crackled over their comms. Herald forces are in full retreat. The dreadnought is withdrawing from the system. A cheer went up from the surviving Vegan forces. Aria looked around at her newfound team. Beings from across the galaxy, united in a common cause. For the first time since this journey began, she felt a true sense of belonging. But even as they celebrated this victory, Aria knew it was only the beginning. The heralds had been driven back, but not defeated. There would be other battles, other worlds to save. As if sensing her thoughts, the Nexus sphere pulsed gently. Aria nodded, a determined smile spreading across her face. They had won the day, but the true war was just beginning. And she would be ready. The victory on Vega Prime had been hard-won, but its impact rippled across the galaxy. Word spread of the Inheritor and her team, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness of the Void Heralds. In the weeks that followed, Aria and her companions traveled from system to system, rallying allies and pushing back Herald incursions. But with each victory, a gnawing sense of unease grew within Aria. The Herald's attacks seemed almost perfunctory, as if they were testing defenses rather than launching a full-scale invasion. "We're missing something," Aria mused, pacing the bridge of the Starweaver. Her team, Lyra, Zax, Nara, and Kathok, watched her with a mixture of concern and curiosity. The Heralds are ancient and powerful. Why haven't they brought their full might to bear? Zephyr, who had been analyzing data from their recent engagements, looked up from a holographic display. "I believe I may have an answer, but you're not going to like it." The Keeper of Memories manipulated the display, showing a map of recent Herald activity. "Look at the pattern of their attacks. They're not random. They're searching for something." Aria's eyes widened as the realization hit her. The precursor vault. Zephyr nodded grimly. A repository of the most dangerous and powerful artifacts from the height of precursor civilization. Its location has been lost for millennia. If the Heralds find it, game over, Nara finished, her symbiotes rippling uneasily beneath her skin. Aria clutched the Nexus sphere, its surface cool against her palm. "Can we use this to locate the vault before they do?" "Possibly," Zephyr replied. "But it would require accessing deeper layers of the sphere's knowledge. It's not without risk." Aria set her jaw. "We're out of options. Whatever the risk, we have to take it." The process was grueling. For hours, Aria delved into the Nexus sphere's consciousness, sifting through eons of accumulated knowledge. The others watched anxiously as she swayed, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Finally, with a gasp, Aria snapped back to awareness. "I know where it is," she panted. "The Andromeda Galaxy. A dead world orbiting a dying star." Kthok's crystalline form shimmered with excitement. "Then we go there and secure the vault." But Lyra, ever the tactician, raised a hand. "Wait, if we figured this out, the Heralds may have as well. We need a plan." What followed was a heated debate. Direct confrontation seemed suicidal. Even with their recent victories, they couldn't hope to match the Herald's full might. It was Zax, his cybernetic mind racing through possibilities, who proposed a daring alternative. "We let them find it," the tech expert said, his artificial eyes gleaming. "But we get there first and set a trap." The plan was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy. They would travel to the vault and use a combination of precursor tech and Aria's growing powers to create a false vault, a perfect replica, down to the energy signatures the Heralds would be scanning for. Inside, they would place a weapon, a quantum bomb capable of creating a localized singularity. When the Heralds arrived and breached the false vault, they would trigger the bomb, potentially taking out a significant portion of their fleet. "It's risky," Lyra cautioned. "A lot could go wrong." Aria nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. "But if it works, we could cripple their forces and buy the galaxy time to prepare." The journey to Andromeda was tense. They traveled in shifts, pushing the Starweaver's engines to their limits. Aria spent the time honing her abilities, pushing the boundaries of what she could do with the Nexus sphere. As they approached the dead world, a hush fell over the crew. The planet was a desolate wasteland, its surface scarred by ancient battles. But buried deep beneath the crust, they detected the unmistakable energy signature of precursor technology. "This is it," Zephyr whispered. "The greatest repository of precursor knowledge in the known universe." They worked quickly, using the Nexus sphere to locate the vault's entrance. As they descended into the planet's depths, Aria felt a sense of awe. The vault was a marvel of engineering, its walls inscribed with the history of a civilization that had touched the stars when Earth was still cooling. But there was no time for wonder. They had a job to do. For days, they labored to create the false vault. Zax's expertise with technology, combined with Aria's growing mastery of precursor systems, allowed them to craft a perfect replica. Nara's stealth skills ensured that their presence remained undetected, while Kathok's strength was invaluable in moving the massive artifacts. Finally, it was done. The trap was set. They retreated to a hidden base they had established in a nearby asteroid field. Now came the hardest part: waiting. Days passed with no sign of the heralds. Tension mounted. Had they miscalculated? Had the heralds somehow detected their presence? On the 5th day, alarms blared throughout the base. A massive herald fleet had entered the system. "This is it," Aria said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "Everyone knows their roles. Let's make it count." They'd watched from their hidden vantage point as herald ships descended on the planet. Massive energy beams lanced from the flagship, boring into the planet's crust to expose the vault entrance. "They're taking the bait," Lyra reported, monitoring the situation through advanced sensors. Hours crept by as the heralds methodically worked their way through the vault's defenses. Aria's heart raced. Had they overlooked something? Would the heralds see through their deception? Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The heralds breached the inner chamber of the false vault. Aria held her breath, her finger hovering over the detonator. But something was wrong. The herald ships weren't reacting as expected. Instead of pressing forward, they were pulling back. "They know," Aria realized with dawning horror. "It's a trap." Before they could react, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive portal, larger than any they had encountered before, materialized above the planet. From its depths emerged a being that defied description. A writhing mass of void energy and twisted flesh that dwarfed even the largest herald ships. "The Void Sovereign," Zephyr breathed, terror evident in their voice. "The leader of the heralds. We never thought, never imagined." The Sovereign's voice boomed across space itself, bypassing their communications and resonating directly in their minds. "Inheritor, did you think we would not see your presence? Your DCPTVION is FAILET. And now, you YLYTNESTAS, the true power of DDE Void." The Sovereign reached out with tendrils of dark energy, not towards the false vault, but towards their hidden base. In that moment, Aria realized the terrible truth. They hadn't lured the heralds into a trap. They had walked right into one themselves. As alarms blared and her teammates scrambled to battle stations, Aria clutched the Nexus sphere tightly. They were outmatched, outgunned, and out of options. But she had come too far, fought too hard, to give up now. With grim determination, she reached for the wellspring of power within her. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain: this would be the fight of their lives.